Chapter 2: The Teacher and the Preacher. Part 1: Morning Lessons. The warehouse smelled like instant coffee and hope. Marco stood in the training area, a cleared space on the ground floor where they'd spray-painted a circle 40 feet in diameter, watching 3 new faces try not to look terrified. The morning sun streamed through the broken skylight, illuminating dust motes that danced in invisible currents only awakened could feel. "Okay," he said, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Let's start with introductions. I'm Marco. I've been teaching wind walking for about 4 years now." That, he gestured to where his boyfriend was setting up traffic cones in a pattern across the floor, "is my partner. He'll be helping with demonstrations today." The girl from the east side stepped forward first. She was maybe 16, rail thin, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that made the air around her vibrate slightly. "And Sarah. I awakened 6 days ago. Woke up and could feel every breath in my apartment building. Thought I was losing my mind until someone told me about you guys." 6 days is recent, Marco said, noting how her hands trembled slightly. "Fear or excitement? Probably both. How's your control?" "I accidentally blew out every window in my bathroom yesterday." She laughed shakily. "So, not great?" "That's normal. We'll work on it." Marco turned to the twin brothers who stood side by side, identical down to their matching leather jackets and cocky expressions. "And you too?" "I'm Reese," said the one on the left. "This is Riley. We awakened 3 weeks ago, same night, same time. Woke up at exactly 3 a.m. and both felt it hit us." "Twins sometimes awaken together," Marco's boyfriend called from across the room, finishing the cone setup. "Shared genetic markers, shared Marner resonance. It's rare, but documented." "Yeah, well, we're special." Riley grinned, and Marco recognized that particular brand of teenage arrogance immediately. The kind that thought having power made you invincible. The kind that got people killed. He'd had it once too, for about 6 hours, before his father had beaten it out of him. "You know what's special?" Marco said mildly, walking a slow circle around the 3 recruits. "Being alive in 6 months. That's going to be the real achievement. Power doesn't make you special, it makes you a target. Purity movement on one side, supremacy cells on the other, beasts coming through portals, and people who don't like others getting too strong too fast." That wiped the smirk off Riley's face. "So here's how this works," Marco continued. "I'm going to teach you techniques that most awakened will never learn. Breathing patterns, movement forms, understanding of air flow dynamics that have been refined over thousands of years. But I'm not going to beat you if you mess up. I'm not going to call you worthless if you don't get it perfect the first time. And I'm not going to make you feel like shit for being human." Sarah raised her hand tentatively. "Thousands of years. But people only started awakening 5 years ago." The training area went very quiet. Marco exchanged a glance with his boyfriend, who gave him a small nod. "Your call. Your story to tell." "That's what most people think," Marco said carefully. "But it's not true. People have been awakening for as long as recorded history. It just happens in cycles. About once every 1,000 years, give or take. The last cycle ended around 1,000 years ago. Now we're in a new one." All 3 recruits were staring at him like he'd grown a second head. "How do you know that?" Reese asked suspiciously. "That's not on any news sites. Nobody talks about that." "Because there are groups, organizations that have known about these cycles for millennia. They've maintained their powers through the gaps between awakenings, passing down techniques through bloodlines, keeping everything secret. Marco sat down on one of the equipment crates, preparing for the information dump he'd given dozens of times before. It never got easier. They're called the Great Clans, 12 major families named after the Chinese zodiac. Rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, pig. That Sarah's voice was faint. That's insane. Why would they keep it secret? Control, Marco's boyfriend said, walking over to join them. If people knew that some families had been hoarding these techniques for thousands of years, while everyone else struggled to figure out their powers alone, there'd be riots, Marco finished. So the clans stay hidden. They have agreements, territories, power structures. Most of the world doesn't even know they exist. And their number one rule is never teach clan techniques to outsiders. Ever. Riley's eyes widened. So you're breaking their rules by teaching us. I'm doing more than breaking their rules. Marco touched his scar unconsciously. I'm one of them. Was one of them. I was born into a great clan, trained from age 3 in their techniques. And 5 years ago, they kicked me out. The silence was deafening. Why? Sarah whispered. Marco met her eyes steadily. Because I'm gay. Because I refused to hide it. And because I was already teaching clan techniques to my boyfriend here. He gestured to his partner, who's clanless. That was unforgivable. Your face, Reese said suddenly, staring at Marco's scar. Someone did that to you. Your own clan? My father, specifically. He's the head of Rabbit Clan. That's where wind techniques come from. And when I wouldn't submit, wouldn't hide who I was, he marked me, cut me with a wind blade and threw me out. I was 13. Sarah looked like she might cry. That's horrible. Yeah. Marco managed a slight smile. But I survived. We both did. And now I teach anyone who wants to learn. Because power doesn't belong to bloodlines. It belongs to whoever's willing to work for it. The clans have been gatekeeping this knowledge for thousands of years, and I'm done with that. So yeah, you're learning Rabbit Clan techniques. Ancient, refined, extremely effective techniques. And the clan is going to be pissed when they figure out how many people I've taught. Aren't you scared? Riley asked. I mean, if these clans are as powerful as you say. Terrified, Marco admitted, but more scared of living in a world where people with power hoard it while everyone else suffers. More scared of becoming, like my father, someone who values tradition over people, control over truth. He stood up. So, knowing all this, knowing you're learning forbidden techniques, knowing the clans might come after anyone I teach, do you still want to learn? All three nodded immediately. Good, Marco said. Then let's talk about breathing patterns. Everything starts with a breath. The three recruits spread out, looking uncertain but willing. Marco walked between them, adjusting postures, correcting foot positions. His boyfriend demonstrated the breathing pattern. Slow inhale through the nose, hold for 3 seconds, exhale through the mouth, while visualizing air currents moving beneath the feet. I feel stupid, Riley muttered after the 5th repetition. Feeling stupid is part of learning, Marco said. You think I got this right the first time? I spent 6 months learning basic breath control before my father even let me try moving with it. That was true, though he left out the part about his father's teaching methods. The way Gerald would make him hold the breathing pattern for hours, striking him with a bamboo cane whenever his rhythm faltered. Discipline makes masters, his father had said. Pain teaches focus. Marco taught differently. When Sarah's breathing pattern fell apart on the 8th try, he just said, "Hey, take a break. Grab some water. Try again when you're ready." The look of shock on her face was almost funny, almost sad. You're not going to yell at me? Why would I yell at you? You're doing fine. This is hard. It's supposed to be hard. Marco handed her a water bottle from their supply crate. The clans have been doing this for thousands of years. You've been doing it for 10 minutes. Give yourself some credit. He caught his boyfriend watching him with that soft expression that meant "I'm proud of you." Marco smiled back. Kai wandered into the training area then, yawning and carrying a bowl of instant oatmeal. He was 19, had been with the Windwalkers for 3 years, and could wind walk better than some clan members Marco had trained with as a kid. New recruits? Kai asked through a mouthful of oatmeal. Sarah, Reese, and Riley, Marco confirmed. Just dropped the clan bombshell on them. They're processing. Kai grinned. Always fun watching people's minds get blown. You tell them about the power gap yet? Was getting to that. Power gap? Sarah asked nervously. Clan members have been training since childhood, Kai explained, setting down his bowl. Marco started learning wind techniques at age 3. By the time he was 10, he could do things most modern awakened will never achieve even if they live to be 80. The gap between clan-trained and self-taught is, he paused, searching for words. The gap between a professional athlete and someone who jogs on weekends, Marco's boyfriend supplied. Clans aren't just stronger, they're trained in ways that maximize every ounce of their potential. They have skill books, ancient techniques, understanding of Marna theory that would take modern scientists decades to figure out. So we're screwed, Riley said flatly. No, Marco said firmly. You're learning from someone who was clan trained. I'm giving you the same foundation I got, just without the abuse. You'll never match someone who's been training since age 3, but you can get a hell of a lot closer than any other clanless awakened out there. That's what the Windwalkers are, people who refuse to accept that power belongs only to bloodlines. Want to show them what 3 years of practice looks like? Marco asked Kai. Kai grinned, set down his bowl, and proceeded to wind walk across the entire training circle in 4 gliding steps that barely seemed to touch the ground. He added a little flourish at the end, a spin that used air pressure to rotate him a full 360 degrees. Show off, Marco called. You asked me to demonstrate, Kai protested, laughing. He turned to the recruits. Seriously though, it takes time. When I started, I couldn't even sense air currents. Marco spent 2 months just teaching me to feel the wind moving. Now I can do this, he gestured at his wind walking, without even thinking about it. Your body learns. Your Marner learns. Just keep practicing. How long until we can do what you just did? Reese asked. Depends. Everyone's different. Sarah might get it in a month. You might take 6, or vice versa. There's no timeline, just progress. Kai retrieved his oatmeal. Oh, and Marco, Jenner wants to talk to you about supply run schedules. Something about the East Side markets being raided last night. Marco nodded, filing that away to deal with later. Thanks. All right, everyone. Back to breathing patterns. 20 more repetitions, then we'll try adding actual movement. 5 years ago, week 1. The alley behind the grocery store smelled like rotting vegetables and desperation. Marco pressed his hand harder against the wound on his face, trying to stop the bleeding that had started again. 3 days since his father had thrown them out, and the cut kept reopening whenever he talked or ate or did anything except lie perfectly still. We need to get that looked at, his boyfriend said for the 100th time, voice tight with worry. It's getting infected. I can see the red spreading. With what money? Marco's voice came out harsh. We've got $43 between us. That's enough for maybe 2 more nights in that shitty motel, or food for a week if we're careful, or a trip to the ER where they'll call child services and send us back to He stopped, couldn't finish that sentence. His boyfriend was quiet for a moment. Then there's a free clinic on 5th Street. For a weekend, I heard some guys talking about it at the shelter. A weekend only? Yeah, some kind of underground thing. No questions asked, no ID required. Marco looked at him, this boy who'd somehow stayed with him despite everything, despite having every reason to run back to his own family and pretend none of this had happened. Your parents would take you back. You know that, right? You could go home, be safe. You're home, his boyfriend said simply. And I'm not leaving you to die in a fucking alley because your asshole father decided marking you wasn't enough. Marco felt something crack in his chest. Not breaking, mending. Okay, the clinic, but after, we need to figure out actual shelter. That motel is burning through our money too fast. There's abandoned buildings in the awakened zones. We could squat. Yeah. Marco tried to smile and felt the wound pull, fresh pain making his eyes water. From clan heir to squatter in 3 days. That's got to be some kind of record. His boyfriend took his free hand, squeezed gently. We'll survive this, both of us. And someday we're going to make him regret what he did. Marco squeezed back. Yeah, someday. Present day. By noon, all 3 recruits had managed at least one successful wind-assisted step. Sarah got it first, her natural sensitivity to air currents giving her an advantage. She'd squealed with delight when she'd glided forward 3 feet without really trying, then immediately tried again and face-planted when her concentration broke. Marco had helped her up, grinning. That's how you know you're learning. The falling means you're pushing your limits. The twins were more competitive, each trying to outdo the other. Riley managed a 5-foot glide before stumbling. Reese, determined to do better, overchanneled and launched himself 8 feet forward directly into a wall. Okay. New rule, Marco announced after making sure Reese's nose wasn't broken. Competition is fine, but we're not trying to impress each other. We're trying to survive. Pride gets people killed. Is that what happened to your face? Riley asked, then immediately looked horrified. Sorry, I didn't mean I shouldn't have. Marco touched his scar reflexively. It's okay. Yes and no. I got this for refusing to hide who I was, for choosing honesty over safety. So I guess you could say it was pride, the good kind. The kind that says I'd rather be marked and free than unmarked and caged. Your father sounds like a monster, Sarah said quietly. He thinks he's righteous. That's what makes him dangerous. Marco's jaw tightened. He genuinely believes that what he did to me was for my own good. That marking me, throwing me out, erasing me from the clan, all of it was necessary to maintain order and tradition. Do you ever see him? Reese asked. I mean, does he know what you're doing? That you're teaching clan techniques? Not yet, but he will soon. Word spreads. And when he finds out, Marco stopped, took a breath. When he finds out, things are going to get complicated. So I need you 3 to understand something. Being part of the Windworkers means you might become targets. The clans protect their secrets viciously. People have died for less than what I'm teaching you. None of them moved toward the door. Good, Marco said. Then let's take a break. Lunch is in the common area. Jenner's been cooking. After that, we'll work on sensing air currents at a distance. That's the foundation for everything else. As the recruits headed toward the stairs, talking excitedly among themselves about clans and ancient techniques and everything they'd just learned, Kai lingered behind. You okay? Talking about your father, the clans, all of it. Yeah, I'm fine. Marco stretched, feeling his ribs protest slightly. Old injuries never really stopped hurting. It's actually easier when people know from the start. Saves the awkward explanation later when they find out I'm from Rabbit Clan. Jenna really does need to talk to you about the supply run thing, Kai said. Purity Movement raided 3 awakened safe houses last night. Executed 4 people on the spot. Everyone's scared. Some folks are saying we should stop the teaching sessions that were drawing too much attention. Marco's jaw tightened. We stop teaching, and people die from lack of control. We stop helping, and the clans win. And my father, he stopped, took a breath. My father wins. I'm not giving him that. I know, just wanted you to know what people are saying. Kai headed toward the stairs. For what it's worth, I think you're right. What we're doing matters. The Windwalkers matter. Thanks, Kai. Alone in the training area, Marco stood in the circle and did the breathing pattern himself. Slow inhale, hold, exhale. Feel the air move. Become part of it. Let it flow through and around you like water around a stone. His father had taught him this. Had spent hours drilling these patterns until they were as natural as breathing, which, technically, they were. But Gerald had taught with cruelty, with punishment for failure, with the underlying message that power was meant to be hoarded, controlled, kept pure within bloodlines. Marco taught differently. Taught that power was meant to be shared. That making mistakes was how you learned. That being human wasn't a weakness to be beaten out of you. He wondered if his father knew yet. If word had reached Rabbit Clan that someone was teaching their techniques to clanless. If Gerald had connected the dots and realized his fallen son had risen into something he couldn't control. Soon, Marco thought, touching his scar one more time. Soon you'll know exactly what I've become. Part 2. The Voice of Righteousness. City Hall, same day, 2:47 p.m. Gerald stood backstage in City Hall's main auditorium, adjusting his tie in the mirror and practicing his smile. Not too warm that read as fake. Not too stern that read as angry. Just right, concerned. Farthily, a man who wished he had better news to share but was brave enough to speak the truth anyway. The smile that had convinced 50,000 followers and counting that he was their savior. He could hear the crowd gathering beyond the curtain. Every seat would be filled. They always were now. Standing room only for latecomers. The Purity Movement had grown beyond his wildest projections, fueled by fear and jealousy, and that most reliable of human motivations, the need to feel superior to someone, anyone. 5 minutes, Mr. Gerald, his assistant Michelle said, poking her head through the doorway. She was normal, completely unpowered, and had no idea what he really was. Nobody in the Purity Movement did. That was the whole point. Thank you, Michelle. He turned from the mirror, rolled his shoulders, and took a breath. Channeled just a touch of Marner, barely anything, just enough to sharpen his focus and clear his mind. One of the benefits of being awakened, you could push past fatigue, enhance your natural charisma. Make yourself more. The irony wasn't lost on him. It never was. How's the crowd? He asked, energized. Andre. Someone distributed flyers about last night's attacks, showed photos of the victims. People want to know what you're going to do about the awakened violence. Gerald smiled, and this time it was real. Perfect. And what am I going to do about it? Protect them, sir. The way you always do. Exactly right, Michelle. That's exactly right. He made his way to the stage entrance, nodding to security. All Purity Movement loyalists, all normal humans, all completely unaware that their leader was exactly what they feared most. The system wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. His powers were subtle enough that no one questioned the miracles they witnessed. The lights dimmed. The crowd noise swelled and then dropped to anticipatory silence. Gerald walked onto the stage, and the response was immediate applause. Cheers. Someone shouting, "Tell them, Gerald, tell them the truth." He raised his hands in a humble gesture. "Please, please, I'm just a messenger," and waited for the noise to die down. "My friends," he began, voice carrying to every corner of the auditorium without needing amplification. Another small trick, using air pressure to project his voice, to make it resonate in ways that normal speech never could. They thought it was just good acoustics. "My dear friends, I come to you today with a heavy heart." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "Last night, in 3 separate locations across our city, innocent families were attacked. Mothers, fathers, children, people whose only crime was being normal, being human, being what God intended us to be." The crowd murmured, angry and afraid. The attackers were awakened, powered individuals who have decided that their abilities make them superior to the rest of us, who believe that might makes right, who think that because they can bend metal or breathe fire, or, he paused for effect, manipulate the very air we breathe, that means the rest of us are somehow less. More murmurs. Someone shouted, "They're demons." Gerald didn't contradict them. "I don't claim to know what they are. What I know is what they do, what they've done to our families, our communities, our world." He began walking across the stage, and as he moved, he channeled just a touch more power. Nothing obvious, nothing anyone could prove, just enough that the air around him seemed to shimmer, to catch the light in ways that made him appear almost luminous. Divine protection. That's what his followers called it. The golden halo that surrounded him during speeches, the way attacks seemed to bend away from him, the miraculous escapes he'd survived, all of it carefully calculated applications of Rabbit Clan technique, all of it built on the powers he condemned. "Some say we should try to coexist with the awakened," Gerald continued, "that we should accept them, integrate them, pretend that everything is fine. But I ask you, how do you coexist with people who see you as prey? How do you integrate with those who consider themselves a different species? How do you pretend everything is fine when your children are being murdered in their beds?" The crowd was with him now, hanging on every word. "I had a son once," Gerald said, and his voice dropped intimate, pained, a father sharing his deepest wound. "A boy I loved more than my own life. I gave him everything, the best education, the best opportunities. I tried to teach him right from wrong, tried to show him the path of righteousness. And do you know what happened? Silence. Absolute silence. He chose sin, chose corruption, chose to abandon everything good and pure and human about himself in pursuit of." Gerald's voice broke beautifully, perfectly, like he was holding back tears, "in pursuit of perversion, of unnatural desires, of everything that goes against God's plan for humanity." He looked out at the crowd, let them see his pain. They had no idea his son was also awakened. No idea about Rabbit Clan or the Great Clans or any of it. They just saw a father mourning a lost child. "I tried to save him, begged him to come back to the light. But sometimes," another pause, another perfectly timed catch in his voice, "sometimes you can't save people who don't want to be saved. Sometimes all you can do is pray that God will find them before it's too late." Clores, not cheerful summer, sympathetic, the sound of people who understood loss and saw themselves reflected in his story. "Perfect. The Bible tells us," Gerald said, pulling himself together with visible effort, "I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. To separate daughter from mother, son from father. And that's what we face now, friends. Separation, division. The sword that cuts between the righteous and the corrupted, between human and other." He let that word hang, other. "But we are not without hope." His voice rose, gaining strength. "We have each other. We have our faith. We have the courage to stand against this darkness and say no more. No more attacks. No more fear. No more pretending that the awakened are just different when they're actively destroying everything we've built." The crowd erupted, cheering, shouting, a few people crying. Gerald channeled just a bit more power, making the air around him glow brighter, making himself appear as what they needed him to be: strong, protected, chosen by God himself. "Together," he said, voice cutting through the noise, "we will take back our world. Together, we will show the awakened that humanity will not go quietly into the night. Together, we will build a future where our children can grow up safe, where being human is enough, where we don't have to live in fear of those who think power gives them the right to rule over us." One final pause, one final burst of channeled power to make his aura shine like sunlight through stained glass. "God bless you all. Stay strong, stay pure, and remember," he touched his heart, "righteousness will prevail." The applause was deafening. Backstage, 3:15 p.m. Gerald waited until the auditorium had cleared and Michelle had left to handle press inquiries before dropping the smile. His face felt tired from holding the expression, and his mana reserves were slightly depleted from maintaining the divine protection effect for 40 minutes straight. He locked the door to his private office, the one backstage that no one entered without explicit permission, and poured himself a whiskey from the bar. Real whiskey, 30-year aged, the kind that cost more than most families made in a month. His phone buzzed. Not his public phone, the other one. The encrypted line that only a handful of people had access to. Rabbit Clan. Gerald's hand tightened on his glass before he answered. "Darius." His cousin's voice was tense. "We have a problem." "I'm listening." Gerald took a sip of whiskey, forced his voice to stay calm. "Someone's teaching our techniques to clanless. Wind walking, specifically. We've had 3 separate reports in the last month of clanless awakened demonstrating proper rabbit clan forms, breathing patterns, pressure distribution, the works." The whiskey suddenly tasted like ash. "How many?" Gerald asked. "Unknown. Could be anywhere from a dozen to 100. They're calling themselves the Windwalkers." Darius's voice was grim. "Gerald, whoever's teaching them knows advanced forms. This isn't someone who picked up basics from watching. This is someone who was trained from childhood. Someone who knows the secret patterns." Gerald closed his eyes. Saw, unbidden, the face of his 13-year-old son, blood streaming down his cheek, eyes full of defiant tears. "I'll never stop being who I am. You can cut me, beat me, throw me away, but you can't make me hide. You can't make me ashamed. And someday everyone's going to know exactly what kind of man you really are." "The council wants to know," Darius continued, "if you have any idea who might be doing this, who would have both the knowledge and the motivation to break clan lore so flagrantly." Gerald took another drink, buying time. If he told the council the truth that his disowned son was spreading rabbit clan techniques, they'd send hunters. Marco would be dead within a week. But that would raise questions. Why did Gerald have a son nobody knew about? Why was that son trained in clan techniques? And most dangerously, why did Gerald keep his clan identity secret from his own movement? If the Purity movement found out their leader was awakened, was part of an ancient powered bloodline, everything would collapse. His followers would turn on him in an instant. "No," Gerald said carefully. "I have no idea who would do this, but it's concerning, very concerning. The council is authorized to use lethal force if we identify the source. Clan lore is clear on this. Of course. Keep me updated on any developments." "There's one more thing." Darius hesitated. "Some of the Windwalkers have been seen in your city. operating out of the awakened zones. We're still gathering intelligence, but given your position with the Purity movement, we thought you should know. It could become a problem if they operate too openly in your territory. They're here. Marco is here. In my city. I'll look into it, Gerald said. Discreetly, the last thing we need is drawing attention to clan business. Reed, I'll send you what intel we have. Gerald, Darius paused. Be careful. Whoever this is, they're not just breaking rules. They're trying to dismantle the entire clan system. This is bigger than one rogue teacher. I understand. Thank you for the warning. He hung up and sat in silence for a long moment, whiskey glass cradled in his hands. Marco, 5 years since he'd thrown the boy out, and apparently his son had been busy teaching clan secrets, building a crew, calling themselves Windwalkers like it was some kind of revolution. Gerald had told himself the boy would die on the streets, that without clan protection, without resources, a gay 13-year-old wouldn't last a month. He'd told himself it was mercy, in a way better a quick death than the slow destruction of being who he was in a world that would never accept it. But Marco hadn't died. Marco had survived. And now Marco was here, in his city, spreading the very techniques Gerald used to maintain his divine protector persona. If his followers ever made the connection, if they ever realized that the miraculous protection surrounding their leader was the same power these Windwalkers were demonstrating, everything would fall apart. Gerald stood at the window overlooking the city, glass of whiskey in hand, and considered his options. He couldn't tell the council the full truth without exposing himself. He couldn't ignore this. The longer Marco taught, the more people learned Rabbit clan techniques, the greater the risk of exposure. He couldn't openly move against the Windwalkers without drawing attention from his own followers, who would ask why he cared so much about some random group of awakened. But he could investigate quietly, personally. He could find out exactly what Marco had built, how many people he'd taught, how much they knew, and then he could decide how to end this threat before it destroyed everything he'd spent 5 years building. His phone buzzed again, his public phone this time. A text from Michelle. Amazing speech, sir. Social media is exploding. #Purity movement trending worldwide. Gerald smiled. He'd built something real here, something powerful. The Purity movement was spreading across continents, offering frightened, normal humans a sense of control, of purpose, of hope. And yes, he was awakened himself. Yes, he used powers while condemning them. But that was different. He had control, discipline, purpose. Not like these street awakened who thought power made them special. Not like his son, who'd thrown away everything: family, legacy, future for some clanless boy, and naive ideals about sharing knowledge. Let him teach, Gerald thought, finishing his whiskey. Let him build his little revolution. And when the time is right, I'll show him exactly what happens when you challenge everything I've built. I'll show him what happens when you challenge me. He made a call on his encrypted phone. Michael, I need you to look into something for me. Discreetly. There's a group calling themselves Windwalkers. I want to know everything about them. Numbers, locations, capabilities, leadership structure, everything. But quietly, this stays between us. A pause, because I'm asking. That's reason enough. He hung up, straightened his tie, and unlocked his office door. Michelle was waiting outside with his schedule for tomorrow's appearances. You have 3 more rallies this week, sir. 1 in the North End, 2 in the suburbs. We're expecting record crowds. Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. He gave her his best fatherly smile, the one that made his followers believe he genuinely cared about each and every one of them. Keep up the good work. As she hurried off, Gerald checked his reflection one more time in the hallway mirror. The divine protector smiled back at him, golden and righteous and pure. His son had chosen his path 5 years ago when he'd refused to submit, refused to hide, refused to be what the world needed him to be. Now Gerald would choose his. And this time, he'd make sure Marco stayed down. Part 3. The First Student. 5 years ago, week 2. The abandoned apartment building had been empty for 2 years, according to the graffiti dating system on the walls. Most of the windows were broken. The electricity was long dead, and the whole structure groaned ominously when the wind picked up. It was perfect. This one, Marco said, pushing open the door to a third-floor unit. Corner apartment. 2 exits. Good sightlines to the street. We can see anyone coming. His boyfriend looked around the empty space dubiously. There's no furniture, no water. Nope, we'll figure it out. Marco was already moving through the rooms, cataloging what they had to work with. The toilet still had water in it, probably from the building's old tank on the roof. The windows facing the alley could be covered with cardboard from the dumpsters below. There was even a mostly intact couch someone had left behind. This is better than the motel, better than the streets. We can make this work. How? The same way everyone else in the awakened zones is making it work. We scavenge, we adapt, we survive. Marco sat down on the dusty couch, testing its stability. It held, and we're not alone. I saw at least 5 other squatters in this building. Maybe we can pool resources, help each other out. His boyfriend sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. The clinic had fixed Marco's face, sort of. The awakened healer there had been able to prevent infection and close the worst of it, but she'd said the scar was permanent. Too precise a cut, she'd explained. Your father used technique that was designed to leave a mark. I can't undo that. So Marco had a scar now, a permanent reminder carved into his face. I met someone today, his boyfriend said quietly, while you were looking at apartments. This kid, maybe 14, said he awakened last month. Doesn't know what he's doing. Keeps accidentally starting fires with static electricity. Marco looked at him. And I thought you could teach him the way you taught me. The breathing patterns, the control techniques. He's going to hurt himself or someone else if he doesn't learn. I'm not qualified to teach anyone anything, Marco said, touching his scar. I'm 13 years old and living in a squat. Your clan trained. You know more about Marner control than 99% of awakened out there, and that kid needs help. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then if I teach him, I'm breaking every clan rule that exists. My father will. Your father already threw you away. What else can he do to you? Kill me, probably. Then we'll be careful. His boyfriend took his hand. But we can't just let people suffer when we could help them. That's not who we are. Marco looked around their new home, this empty, broken space that somehow represented freedom more than his father's 12-acre estate ever had. Okay, tell the kid to come by tomorrow. We'll see what we can do. His boyfriend smiled and pulled him into a kiss that tasted like hope. The next day, the kid's name was David, and he looked terrified. So you're what? Some kind of teacher? David stood in the doorway of their squat, hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched like he expected to be hit. Marco recognized that posture, had worn it himself until his father beat it out of him and replaced it with perfect clan air posture. And someone who knows about powers, Marco said carefully. I was trained by people who have been doing this for a really long time, and I'm willing to teach you the basics. How to control it. How to not accidentally hurt people. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Because 5 years ago, if someone had offered to help me understand what was happening, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. Marco gestured for David to come inside. And because my boyfriend's right, if you don't learn control, you're going to hurt yourself or someone else. So, you want help or not? David stepped inside cautiously, like he expected a trap. What's the catch? No catch. Just what I'm going to teach you. I'm not supposed to teach. There are groups, families who have had these powers for thousands of years. They keep their techniques secret, and I'm breaking those rules by helping you. Why? Because fuck them, Marco said simply. Power doesn't belong to bloodlines. It belongs to anyone willing to work for it. David stared at him, at his scar, at the bare apartment with its broken windows and salvaged furniture. You got kicked out, too, for being awakened. Among other things, Marco didn't elaborate. Look, you want to learn or not? Because if you do, we start with breathing. Everything starts with breathing. David nodded slowly. Okay, yeah, I want to learn. And that's how it started. One student, one desperate kid who needed help. By the end of the week, there were 3 more. Word spread fast in the awakened zones. There was this teenager, barely older than most of them, who knew actual techniques, who could teach control, who didn't charge anything except asking that you practice and maybe help the next person who needed it. Marco taught them all the same way: breathing patterns first, then sensing minor flow, then basic techniques. He was patient when they struggled, encouraging when they succeeded, honest about his own limitations. I'm not our master, he told them repeatedly. I'm just someone who was trained young. I'm figuring this out same as you, but we can figure it out together. His boyfriend helped, teaching what Marco had taught him, creating a system where more advanced students could help newer ones. They started keeping notes, writing down techniques and principles so they wouldn't forget. They were building something, without meaning to, without planning it. They were creating a community. We need a name, David said one night after a particularly successful training session where he'd managed to control his electricity for a full minute without sparking. Something to call ourselves, so people know where to find us. Marco looked around at the dozen faces gathered in there: squat kids and teenagers and a few adults, all learning, all growing, all refusing to accept that power was something only special bloodlines could access. Windworkers, his boyfriend suggested quietly. You're teaching wind techniques, and we're all learning to walk on air. Marco touched his scar, thought about his father, about Rabbit Clan, about everything he'd lost and everything he was building in its place. Yeah, he said. Windwalkers. I like that. Present day 9:47 p.m. Marco sat on the roof with his boyfriend, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Training had done well today. All 3 recruits had made real progress, and Sarah had even managed a 10-foot wind-assisted glide before falling into the padding they'd set up. You were good with them, his boyfriend said, head resting on Marco's shoulder. Patient. The way you explained the clan thing without making it sound like they were doomed, you gave them hope. That's the point. Marco's fingers traced idle patterns on his boyfriend's arm. They're not doomed. The clans want everyone to think that bloodline is destiny, that you're either born powerful or you're nothing. But that's bullshit. With proper training, anyone can be strong. Your father really did a number on you, huh? Marco was quiet for a moment. He taught me what not to do, how not to be. So in a weird way, he made me a better teacher by being such a shitty one. Silver lining. His boyfriend tilted his head up for a kiss, which Marco provided happily. You see the news? Your father did another rally this afternoon. Yeah, Jenna showed me the clips. Same rhetoric, different day. Fallen son chose sin. God will judge the wicked, Blar blar blar. Marco tried to keep his voice light, but couldn't quite manage it. He's getting worse, more aggressive. 4 executions last night, that's a new record. The clan thing's going to reach him soon. Rabbit Clan must have heard by now that someone's teaching their techniques. Probably already has, but he can't do anything about it without exposing himself. If the Purity movement finds out their divine protector is actually awakened, actually part of an ancient clan using the exact powers he condemns, Marco smiled grimly. His whole empire collapses. So I'm betting he tries to handle it quietly. Investigate without anyone knowing. Maybe try to scare us into stopping. And if he comes himself, then we finally have it out. Marco's jaw set. 5 years of running. 5 years of building. I'm not hiding anymore. Not from him. Not from the clans. Not from anyone. Below them, someone was playing music. Kai, probably, who'd scavenged a working radio last week. The sound drifted up, some pop song about freedom and flying and breaking chains. Appropriate. You ever think about what happens if we win? His boyfriend asked. Like actually win. Take down your father's movement, prove the hypocrisy, change how people think about Awakened and clans. Sometimes. Usually I'm too busy trying to make sure we survive the next week. Marco pulled him closer. But yeah, sometimes I imagine a world where people like us don't have to choose between hiding and dying, where being awakened is just normal, where clans share their knowledge instead of hoarding it, where your father has to admit he was wrong. Marco laughed bitterly. That'll never happen. He'd rather die than admit he's wrong. But I don't need him to admit it. I just need everyone else to see it. To see him for what he really is. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city burn and rebuild and burn again in the endless cycle that had become normal. Somewhere out there, people were dying, awakened and normal both. Caught in a war they'd never asked for. But up here on this roof, in this moment, Marco felt something close to peace. He'd survived. They'd both survived. And they'd built something real, something good, something that mattered. The scar on his face ached slightly in the evening chill, phantom pain, mostly psychological, but real enough. He touched it absently, feeling the familiar raised line. His father's mark. His father's attempt to brand him as fallen, as worthless, as nothing. But Marco had taken that mark and made it mean something else. Survival, resistance, refusal to submit. I love you, his boyfriend said suddenly. In case I don't say it enough, I love you, and I'm proud of you, and everything we're building, it's because of you. Your vision, your courage, your... Marco kissed him quiet. It's because of us. Both of us. We did this together. Yeah, together. They stayed on that roof until past midnight, holding each other against the dark, making plans for tomorrow's training session and next week's supply run and the future they were building one stubborn day at a time. Below them, the windworkers slept, dreaming of flight. And across the city, in a luxury office that he kept carefully separate from City Hall, Gerald sat alone with his whiskey and his secrets, making his own plans. Father and son, separated by 5 years and an unbridgeable chasm of betrayal, both preparing for the confrontation that had been inevitable since the moment blood first fell on imported hardwood floors. The scar on Marco's face was just the beginning. The real wound, the one that would decide everything, was still to come. But tonight, on this roof, under these stars, Marco let himself believe they might actually win. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own battles, its own pain. Tonight, he had his boyfriend, his crew, and his convictions. Tonight, that was enough. End of chapter 2.